finally have an NBA schedule.
I know. I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, we're not going to talk about it at the beginning of this podcast.
No, we're talking about something fun.
Yeah, of course. Jake Weinbach. Is that it? I'm hoping I'm saying his name right. I always butcher names. You know the show.
Yeah.
But he said the Pistons could be a team to monitor regarding the level of interest in All-Star Pascal Siakam. So my question to you is, would Pascal Siakam be the right move right now for this young Pistons team?
Before I do answer that, I just kind of want to give like a PSA. Like, this isn't so much him reporting; it's just him kind of like assuming. Because I don't want people coming, like listening to the podcast first 5 minutes. Pascal Siakam's not coming to Detroit, because you know you're gonna have those fans. It was just him kind of like connecting to that's like, hey, Casey's in the front office. You know, Siakam played in Toronto. Like it was just like probably the most like, I don't want to say bullshit, but it was just kind of like a bullshit tweet. I think the asking price for him would be either Asar, Ivy, Dern, or Cade to even get Toronto to pick up the phone personally. And I don't think you can kind of just like, hey, here's Hayes and Wiseman. You wanted to make a deal? Like, I don't think Toronto's at that point of that stage of like trading Siakam to just a team just to trade him. I think they want to get like peak value for him.
But what if, remember that Dallas trade we were talking about? I think it was the Dallas trade we were talking. No, New Orleans for Zion Williamson. If it's a trade package similar to that, where it's Bojan, Killian Hayes, and James Wiseman, or Marvin Bagley, whoever you want to throw in there, for Pascal Siakam, would you do that? Would you pull the trigger on that trade then?
I mean, with that question, like, yeah, I would, but like, I've tried to be like a realist and like not like do it like a 2K trade in my head, because I can guarantee you I can get like Pascal Siakam for like Corey Joseph and like 6 first-round picks. I guarantee I could do it. But with him, it's a 1-year rental. And that, to me, I think that's the biggest risk with him. Is he said that if you trade for me, I'm not going to resign with you. He said that in a recent article piece. And I saw reporting that like a contract for him could be like north of $200 million. So it's just like, do you really want to possibly trade a valuable asset on your team and then possibly lose him in free agency because he's just going to resign with the Raptors because he wants to stay there?
So you're saying, so he's basically saying like, no matter what team I go to, I'm only here for a year and then I'm going back to Toronto. Is that kind of like the underlining of what he was saying?
Yeah, kind of. I know it's not the same, but kind of like how Kawhi got traded to the Raptors, won a championship, and signed with the Clippers. That's basically what he would probably do. I think we do need a power forward on this team, and I love Isaiah Stewart. I really do. But I think that's one position that I think most Pistons fans can agree where we do need to upgrade that position. I think Isaiah Stewart is a great player. I think he can shoot the shit at the ball from the outside. But I think adding like an all-star like that, yeah, I think a lot of fans would be happy with it. But I just don't think it's a realistic option personally. And I think Jake was just, tweeting the tweet and kind of got a lot of Pistons fans excited.
Yeah, I just want to like talk about it just for a second, though, because I said on Twitter, like, this is not the time for the Detroit Pistons to make a move like this. I'd rather have them trade for a Pascal Siakam or a player like that when they're more ready to compete. And I've changed my mind. I've done a complete 180 on that take since I tweeted that out. I think he'd be a great fit in Detroit, man, especially if the Pistons are trying to win this upcoming season, because the Pistons are just too young. And I think if you can give them another guy that can score the ball in isolation, in pick and roll as the handler or as the roll man, a guy that can catch and shoot, even though the numbers aren't great. I think he was like 34% on 3 attempts per game with the catch and shoot, but a great one-on-one game, decent playmaker. I think he averaged around 6 assists per game, maybe a tad under that. Good rebounder, but it gives you just another guy offensively where if Cade goes to the bench, you're not relying on Jaden Ivey, even though I think Jaden Ivey is going to be very good. I just think right now his play style isn't going to generate that many wins. So if you could get another guy in there that could create for himself and for others while Cade gets a rest on the bench, your team's going to be that much better. That is why I would like Pascal Siakam. Plus, not a bad defender, not great by any measures, but looks better on a better overall team, good help defender. And I think I think in many cases, once you're not the focal point of an offense, that other side of the ball is just going to get better. And I think the same thing would happen with Pascal because he just has that relentless motor going all the time. I don't know. I think it would be a great fit for the Detroit Pistons. And it kind of sucks that it's just, I'm glad we have a topic for the podcast, but I just wish there was a little more truth to it, because he's the type of player, the type of guy that's he's made 2 All-NBA teams, made 2 All-Star appearances, but he's the type of guy where you could see him being in Detroit long-term because he just has that kind of low-key personality. Basically from what I've seen and what I've read. I mean, I don't know him personally by any measure, but he just seems like he would fit that Detroit mentality where he would be here for a while. And I think his game is going to age pretty well. I mean, I used to think the moment an NBA player hit 32, I'm like, it's downhill. It's downhill at 32, but it's a whole different day and age where there's just so much going into their bodies and how much they work and how much rest they get that, these guys, they play at a high level till they're 35, 36, 37 years old now. And I think he's one of those guys that could do it.
I think the front court depth is interesting, especially at power forward. We've talked about Marvin Bagley saying he doesn't want to play center. He wants to play power forward. I mean, if that's something that he really wants to do, I think he's more than capable of playing power forward. We saw this summer that Wiseman and Duren were in the front court. I want to say Wiseman was playing center and Duren was playing power forward. I might be wrong. Someone could probably correct me. But I think what the Pistons want to do before they make a big splash like this is let's see what we have. Let's see what Cade Cunningham looks like with a Jalen Duren in the starting lineup. Let's see how Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey do in the backcourt together. I think a move like this is going to happen. I really do, Lance. I just think for this season, they want to see what's there. Because you could make a trade like this right now. I think you have the young assets. You have some, I don't want to say cheap contracts, but you have contracts like a Bagley, a Wiseman that aren't too expensive, but a lot of teams would probably like to have them. I think for this season, we just have to see what we have in our young talent, and maybe next year we can be in that conversation for a borderline all-star type level player because it would be really, I don't want to say it's similar to when we traded for Blake Griffin, but it could be a similar situation where you trade for somebody, he wants a contract. Well, Blake was under contract when we traded for him, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
I think trading for an all-star like that, it's a risk, but it could pay off. But I just think the Pistons right now, they're just not in the position to, trade away an Asar Thompson, trade away an Ivy or Duren or anything like that to get the ball rolling for a trade package for Siakam.
The only thing I will say that I think is different than the Blake Griffin trade is that the Pistons are just set up roster wise a little better to bring in an all-star like Pascal Siakam. And I think, because I know Toronto, they're kind of in that, are we rebuilding stage? Are we not rebuilding? If you want a chance at a top 5 pick, trade for Killian Hayes. He'll get you there. I mean,
bro, can we go one podcast without you making fun of the guy? Honestly, you were the Pistons just use their audio for their video, and you're trashing Killian every podcast. I swear, bro.
Well, maybe the Toronto Raptors will use our audio, and they'll use that. Who knows?
Jesus.
You have to have a little humor with it all. But I think they're just, I don't know. I mean, once I saw the Bleacher Report article last week about Zion Williamson and the trade offer that, I mean, I get it. It was them throwing it out there, but it doesn't seem unrealistic to be able to have a package centered around Bojan with a couple of first-round picks and get an all-star player in return. And Zion, I think, would help if he's healthy, but I think Pascal Siakam, who is clearly healthy, he played 71 games this past year, 68 the year before. He's been on a championship team. He's made deep playoff runs. He's been an all-star. He's been an all-NBA player, and he's still under 30 years old. He could have that window of winning that opens up dramatically, I think, with Pascal Siakam on the roster, even with the roster the way it's currently constructed. And I don't think you'd have to give up a young guy for him. I think Troy Weaver could make a deal while keeping Duren, Cade, Ivy, and Asar on this team.
I don't think you can, because I'm trying to think what team offered a package. I can't remember what team it was. And it was Atlanta. I'm sorry. Atlanta offered them like DeAndre Hunter and another young player and like some draft pick swaps, and they said no. And I was like, that's really interesting. They would like kind of turn that down, because I think it was like Hunter, Okongwu, and something else, and they're like, yeah, no, we're good. Like, I don't really know what Toronto's trying to do. I think they're just trying to do it like a soft retool, kind of like how the Pistons did like under Van Gundy's era, where they didn't really fully commit to a rebuild, but they would just bring in, new players in each and every year. But I know we are going to trade for a star. I just don't think it's going to be this year. I think it's coming, because you're going to have roughly around $38 million of cap space to spend next summer. So we all know Troy Weaver likes to use that cap space in trade. So you never really know.
True. I really do. My fingers are crossed that it's Pascal Siakam, because I think he is going to be phenomenal just for like another 5 years. I think he's going to be great, and it would be fun to see him. There was someone on Twitter that said he could be our next Clifford Robinson, and I just got so excited hearing that, because I loved Clifford Robinson when he played. When I was really starting to fall in love with the game in the early 2000s, Clifford Robinson was on the Pistons, and I loved his game. It would be cool to root for another guy like that. So, yeah, I would be all in on Pascal Siakam, but let's move on to some news. Let's talk about this schedule release.
Okay, let's get it.
So on Thursday, the NBA announced their schedule release. So we were all excited. I don't know what the Pistons were trying to do with like Jalen Rose, and I forget who the other host was. But that was kind of funny. I didn't know what it was, but I think it was in relation to some other dating show or something like that that's going on right now. But the Pistons' first game of the year is against the Miami Heat on October 25th, and their first home opener is against the Chicago Bulls on October 28th. And it feels like we start the season at home against the Chicago Bulls like every year. It's like a tradition like none other. Going back to Isaiah Thomas and Michael Jordan, whose beef is still going on today. But those are the facts right early on with the schedule. But are there any games you're circling on the calendar?
Not particularly. Like, love to see how Monty coaches up against Phoenix. So that I believe we play Phoenix fairly early in the schedule. I think most Pistons fans, they already have the Rockets game in January when we're at home. The only national televised game this year is a Rockets game that ESPN did pick up. I think that's probably the most obvious answer. But I think the first game of the season, to me, that's one game that I'm really looking forward to watching. Not because basketball is back. It's because you're going up against a team that was just in the NBA Finals. I think that's going to be a really good test to see where this team is at. Not saying the Pistons are going to win a championship or anything, but it'll kind of tell you, okay, what should my expectations for this team be? Because this is a team that's in the playoffs each and every year. One of the most, Eric Spoelstra, in my opinion, is one of the best coaches in the NBA. I really want to see how they attack the Pistons. I want to see how the Pistons respond. I think it's going to be a really good game, and I could see the Pistons maybe possibly, sneaking one off in Miami, because it seems like when we go to Miami, we play really well.
So the Suns, that's the 7th game on November 5th of the regular season. I do have the Houston Rockets circled because, that's a rivalry. Let's be honest. Like, I want to see Asar and Amin go at it. I also have the Charlotte Hornets circled, because I really think LaMelo and Cade could be a fun matchup for years. Two big point guards, not similar styles, but, one's more like a Hollywood, gonna, have a highlight every single game, going to throw these crazy, ridiculous passes. And then there's on the other side, there's a more cerebral player in Cade who, seems to always make the right decision. That's going to be a fun one. The Kings matchup, I just want to see Cade and like Jaden Ivey go against some fun backcourts. And De'Aaron Fox, he's one of the more explosive, faster, athletic point guards in the league. That's going to be fun. And then obviously Keegan Murray, because I felt like the fan base was torn between him and Jaden Ivey during that draft. And then I got the Pacers games on there again, just because of the Jaden Ivey, Benedict Mathurin talk we had last year. That's going to be a fun rivalry. But are there any matchups this season that you're looking forward to? Because, like I said, LaMelo and Cade, Benedict Mathurin, Jaden Ivey. I want to see Asar and Amin. I want to see Jalen Duren dunk on Wemby. That's going to be a fun matchup too. Like, who doesn't want to see that? But are there any for you that you're like, man, this is like, I will definitely like clear my calendar to make sure that I'm watching this game because I want to see these two players go at it?
Honestly, like I'm watching every game anyways.
Yeah, same.
Like I don't know if I would get like extra excited to like watch like Wemby versus Duren because Wemby's probably just gonna sit out anyways.
Oh, come on.
Did you see that? They're gonna like monitor him this year. They're not gonna let him play back to backs or anything.
Yeah, I remember there was someone a couple of months ago that was talking about that, how I think they were talking about like Wemby as a rookie of the year, how he might put up the numbers, but he won't have enough games played to win it because the Spurs are going to be pretty careful and they're probably going to handpick matchups for him to play in, probably give him some big minutes against easier competition where, he can look better and get some confidence in his game and get welcome to the NBA. I get that. Kind of sucks though.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Pacers game, that's a game that I think maybe not every Piston fan will be excited about, but I told you last week, I think that could rekindle the rivalry because the Pacers have a nice young core. I mean, they have Halliburton, we have Cade. Someone said Killian versus Halliburton matchup of the decade.
I knew that was
Yeah, shout out to Ben. He's like the number one resident Killian Hayes hater in the chat. He has been way before we even drafted him. I remember him saying, draft Halliburton, you don't want Killian. But getting back to the Pacers stuff, you got Ivy and Mathurin. Mathurin still feels salty. He thought he should have went fifth to the Pistons. So that's a matchup. Then you have the Pacers have a nice front court. They just traded for Obi Toppin. I believe they still have Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith. We have just as much bigs to throw at them. I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup to watch to see how the Pistons can match up with them because the Central Division, in my opinion, is really stacked. The most stacked probably in the last 5 years. I mean, we all know Milwaukee's a powerhouse. Cleveland, when healthy, powerhouse. I think the Pacers, I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Pacers. I think the Pacers could be a top 6 seed easily if they're healthy.
They're going to be a good team. This still got Buddy Hield launching threes. He's been one of the best and most consistent three-point shooters for like the last 6 years or something like that in the NBA. Tyrese Halliburton, fantastic point guard. I mean, I think, he's just incredible. The Orlando Magic, that might be another game too, just because of the Franz Wagner going number 1 in the Cade Cunningham draft. That's going to be a fun matchup as well. Then you got Paolo Banchero. That's always cool. But I'm not really looking forward to like the Scottie Barnes and Evan Mobley coming to town or when the Pistons play the Raptors and the Cavaliers. I don't know why those two games don't. I mean, I really like watching some of those players. We were just talking about Pascal Siakam. Then there's Donovan Mitchell for the Cavaliers. He had a 71-point game last year. I mean, definitely some exciting players, but I'm just not as interested in matchups in those games that I am against for some of these other games. The Pistons also. What's that?
I was going to say, is it bad that I don't really care about the matchups? I don't care if it's like the Hornets like 82 times. I just want basketball back.
No, I mean, it's just, I think that's what's so fun about basketball is because you do get some of these individual matchups that can be talked about for years and years and years to come. And it is kind of cool to see. It's like a wide receiver and a defensive back meeting on the field, and just, to watch that in a football game. You kind of get that with a basketball game. So like I said, some of these matchups are fun, but the Pistons, they have 15 back-to-backs. That's the most in the NBA. And I don't know, do you think they just did this because the Pistons are a young team? Like, it doesn't feel like a punishable thing. It just feels like, I don't know, maybe someone either overlooked the Pistons and just said, who cares? Or they looked at the average age of rosters and said, okay, we got them. They can do some back-to-backs.
I really don't think the NBA schedule makes any sense. I really don't. I know we had 13 back-to-backs last year, and the NBA said they wanted to cut back on back-to-back, so they gave us 2 more. So there's that. I think the NBA, I don't want to say the NBA is punishing Detroit, because I don't want to be like one of those Pistons fans, like Detroit versus everybody with my chest out. I just think they punished the Pistons, and I'm contradicting myself. I think they punished the Pistons for, only winning 17 games. I really do. Like, some of the lineups they were putting out there, the tanking was evident. They shut down half the roster by March. Like, the schedule, in my opinion, I'm looking at it right now, I don't really think it's that bad. Like, October and November, it's really not that bad. It really doesn't get tough until December, January. I think that's where it, in my opinion, it's going to get more tough. But I think 15 back-to-backs, they're young players. I know personally, when I was playing basketball, I only played junior and youth basketball, but I liked playing back-to-back games because I felt like I was, more focused and I was more in the zone. I didn't like going 3-4 games without a game because I felt like I was rusty.
So you don't think, real quick, the beginning, I mean, I agree with you on that too. I like playing back-to-back games. In my early 20s, when I was out on my own, I was playing basketball 3 times a week, but my 2 favorite days were Tuesday and Wednesday, going just playing 20 games of basketball in 2 days. Yeah. It was just so much pickup, so much just run during the winter seasons. It was awesome. But you don't think the beginning of the Pistons schedule is difficult? Look at some of those teams they're playing up against. You got the Warriors, you got the Heat, you have the Suns. There's New Orleans Pelicans. They're in there as well. They're a good team. You got the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, November, I mean, like I said, it's the beginning of the season, and not all these teams are going to come out firing on all cylinders. I honestly think they could beat Phoenix. I don't think Phoenix is going to be ready to put up 140 points a night right off the bat, because there's one basketball, and they have, in my opinion, the best, roster constructed on paper right now. Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton. I think you could probably sneak a win, and they always do good against Golden State. I don't know what it is. They like beating. I would not be surprised on the 5th and 6th they have wins. I just would not be surprised.
So what do you think? What do you think their schedule is in the first 20 games?
The record?
Yeah, the record in not schedule. The record in the first 20 games.
If I'm looking at it, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. I apologize. This is really bad podcasting. 6, 7.
You're good. I'm just drinking over here.
So I don't think they'll be above 500.
Same.
I think that there are tough games. I could see them starting off October 2-2. I see them beating Charlotte, because Charlotte's not going to have Miles Bridges yet, and I think that our roster's a little bit more well constructed. I think they could beat Chicago because they still don't have Lonzo Ball, and they don't really play any defense over there. I think OKC, that'll be a great game just to kind of see where they're at. But I think 20 games, maybe 8 and 12.
Ooh, I said 6 and 14. I just think beginning of the season, it's just, I don't know. I just don't see. Like, I'm with you on the Hornets. I think they could get a win there. Bulls, you're going up against Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. They do got a little defense with Alex Caruso, and he's going to be a pit bull no matter what. The
But we're at
Heat,
home.
yeah. I just remember Zach LaVine going off against them at home, though. I feel like it was last year. Maybe I'm wrong. Trailblazers, I could see that being a win. Pelicans, that's kind of a toss-up for me, I guess. But if everybody's healthy, I would give it to New Orleans. We already talked about the Suns. Then the Warriors, that could be – I feel like that would be a win. But then you go up against the Bucks, the 76ers. That's a road and a home game. But I don't know. I feel like those are two losses. Then you have the Bulls in Chicago, then the Hawks again in Detroit. And I don't know. I feel like those could be two losses too. I just feel like it's going to be 6-14 to start the season. And I feel like the Pistons, because I think they have two stretches of like 6 or more home games in a row. I think they have 2 stretches of that this season. And I think that could be some quite a bit of wins for them with this young team playing at home.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the schedule, I think all these games are going to be fairly competitive. I really do. I don't think it's just going to be like last year where it's like it seemed like last year we were down 25 at halftime every night.
Yeah.
I see them coming out being competitive. I can't see them just like, okay, we're down 25, we're not going to play anymore. Like, that's not how Monty Williams teams play.
No.
I think the only game I could see where I'm like, yeah, there's no way they're beating them, and it's Milwaukee, because you just don't have an answer for Giannis. Giannis is just gonna go crazy, and you're in Milwaukee.
Yeah, especially if we're starting Bojan at the 4, which is probably the case. No, I agree with you. I do think the Pistons are going to be very competitive, but I think there's just going to be still some growing for them on how to win in the NBA. And I feel like, even though I'm saying I still think they're a 32-win team, I just think the first 20 games, you're not going to see a whole lot of wins. You're going to see close games, but they're eventually going to find that pecking order and find that roster that closes games and starts getting them some wins. I do think the Pistons go on some winning streaks this year. I just don't think it happens at the beginning of the season. Now, maybe I'm wrong and they catch a few teams by surprise, but 6-14 or even 8-12, that seems pretty realistic in the first 20 games. And I think then eventually the Pistons get rolling once they get more comfortable in Monty Williams' system. And yeah, I mean, again, I think this team wins way more games than they did last year. I think we're going to see a 15-game win improvement. It's just not going to happen early on. We're going to have some growing pains.
Yeah, I mean, like, then you got the stupid play-in tournament, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, which to me, like, I just, why is it a thing? Like,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the play-in tournament. Let's move on. Let's go to the in-season tournament.
Good Lord, man. It's just, it's the stupidest thing. I get, like, they're trying to be, like, recreate the wheel and be, like, I know Adam Silver likes to be different, but it's like, I don't understand, like, seeding different teams in different brackets. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Are you less excited about it because there's, like, no incentive for it for the teams? Like, what would you want to see other than a trophy?
There's incentive. Like, you get money. I know Bobby Marks, he had said something that the team that wins a tournament that I think he said on ESPN, the team that wins the tournament should automatically be a lock for the playoffs. Like, if they win the in-season tournament, they should make a playoff spot.
God, could you imagine a 17-win Pistons team getting hot in the in-season tournament and making the playoffs with 17 wins? That'd be just crazy.
I think they should tie it in with the lottery. I really do.
I would either say lottery or the team that wins it, if they make the playoffs, they get home court advantage.
I would say, like, with the in-season tournament, I don't know, maybe you get a higher chance at a draft pick. Like, instead of like a 2%, you go up to like maybe 5%. You know?
Yeah, I would say increase your percentages based on where you fall. So if you're like drafting 26th, if you win the in-season tournament, you can jump up to like 23rd. You get the 23rd pick. You swap. Or even imagine if they did it where whoever you played in the finals, whoever you beat, you had to do a pick. You could do a pick swap with them. So you like beat a team that ends up in the top 3 and you're picking 28th or whatever, and you can swap, or that would be crazy.
I don't know. It's just, I think the concept is cool, but maybe you just, this is just like off the cuff, really wild. It's probably a stupid idea, but like I would do it after the season's over and match up all 20 teams that make the playoffs, but go by record. So you have East versus West.
I would do it to start the season. I would put it as the first thing like the first 2 weeks of the NBA season are a in-season tournament. I mean, I don't know, because I don't want fans to say like, oh, they're the in-season. There definitely should be some period where we recognize who the champions are. So scratch my idea. I just think it's an interesting idea, but there needs to be incentive for the fans to get behind it. That's what they need to do.
Or even the players in general. Like, they're like, oh yeah, $500,000. It's like, NBA players make great money. I mean, maybe that's a lot to a two-way guy because they're only making like 100 to 200,000.
Or even they make it.
But yeah, something crazy. But like, I don't know, man. Like, I think the concept's cool, but like just the way they're executing it, I just, for me personally, I think it's pointless.
I don't know. I just think you have to do something for the fans to get behind it. Because if the fans get behind it, it's going to be good no matter what. Or, well, you have to find something that's in it for the players, whether it's home court advantage throughout the playoffs. And then you have to do something for the fans, too, to get us excited about it as well. Other than home court advantage for the players. And then I think you have to, like we were saying, better lottery odds. Like, if you're picking top 3, instead of everybody getting, what is it, a 14% chance, your team gets like an 18% chance at the number 1 overall pick. Fans will get behind that, extra lottery odds, or I don't know, to do a pick swap or something. Like you have to do something that excites the players other than money, because you're right, they make an incredible amount of money already, whether you're the 12th man on the team or you're an all-star. You're getting quite a bit of money. So there has to be more than money behind it. Even though money does talk. Let's be honest. The best thing about having money is getting more money. Let's just be honest. Yeah, but like I said, do something. You got to excite the players, whether it's home court advantage. You have to do something for the fans for us to get excited about it. And I think either a pick swap or better lottery odds would be better.
Yeah, like I just want to read the in-season tournament schedule for fans. So we're going to play Philly on the 10th of November, which who knows if Harden or Embiid is even on that team. Who knows? We play Atlanta 4 days later on the 14th. We play Cleveland on the 17th and the Pacers on the 24th. That's a rough schedule for the Pistons because all those teams are great teams.
Do you see the Pistons like getting hot though, being such a young team?
I could see them maybe winning one of those games. I don't think they go far in the in-season tournament, and it's nothing against them. It's just, it's just a hard schedule, man. Like you're going up against Embiid if he's still there, and Harden. Who knows what's going to happen with him? Like that's a tough matchup. You could get bounced out of the play-in tournament your first game.
I don't know. The more we're talking about it, the less excited I'm getting about it.
Yeah, it's stupid. Like I said, it's the stupidest idea I've ever. Like, I don't know what's like what they've done with the All-Star game. Like, I absolutely hate it. Like Team LeBron and Team Giannis or Team KD. It's the stupidest shit ever. Just like give me East versus West. I don't want all this buddy bullshit on TNT drafting players. Like this is the stupidest thing.
Yeah, I don't like what they did with the All-Star game. I like the I'm blanking on the name, how they do it in the fourth quarter, how you have to get like to a certain score. That I like that. That's a nice addition to the All-Star game because I feel like it gives them a little bit, I don't know, it brings up the competition level a little bit in the fourth quarter. the Elam scoring. My bad. That's what it is from the TBT tournament. But I do think, I mean, the All-Star game, I think if what you could do again to make it exciting, it comes down to home court advantage. Like if you could give a team a home court advantage, but you'd have to go back to East and West. You'd have to do it that way. I miss East and West. I thought that's just way better in my opinion.
Yeah, I triggered a bunch of people when I said All-Star game. I apologize, you guys. I did not mean to ruin your night.
One thing I want to ask you, though, before we move on to our next topic, our next piece of news, I forgot to ask you, what game would you go to live? If you were getting tickets for free and someone said, hey, I'm going to give you tickets, you pick the game. Spurs, so you can see Wemby, even though you don't think he's going to play. Rockets, because it's a rivalry game. Suns, because you get Devin Booker, KD, and it's Monty's old team. Or a Pacers game, because, again, I think that's a rivalry game. Out of those
Rockets game all day.
Okay. I think that would be my choice. It's either Rockets or the Suns for me. Just because I'm going to see – I mean, it's cool to see Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Like, they're just phenomenal basketball players. You got to take them in while they're here. But, yeah, the Rockets, rivalry, being able to boo Jalen Green. There's something about that that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know ESPN's just going to, like, make this into a huge rivalry. Like, I already know it's going to happen. Because they didn't pick up Rockets versus Pistons on like national TV last year, but I think now you have the Thompson twins, which even makes it even more of a rivalry. You have Cam Whitmore, which a lot of Pistons fans wanted at 5. So I mean, it's just, to me, I think it's just going to be must-see TV.
Do you think like the little Twitter wars that go on have any influence on it?
100%. People at like Rockets Twitter and Pistons Twitter hate each other with a passion.
Good.
And like I see a lot of people on Pistons Twitter, like they poke at Jalen Green like crazy. Like I don't really partake in those like videos that they post, or Jalen Green's a bust, he wears nail polish, none of that shit, because I kind of just like being a spectator personally. I don't want them like coming towards us or you. But it's very entertaining. Like if you want to piss a Rocket fan off, it's very easy to do so.
I'll go hours and ignore someone before I respond to somebody. I mean, like I'll just be at work, at the barbershop, and sometimes I just get notification. I'm like, I can't say anything. Like I'm working. I don't have time just to sit on my butt and tweet away. I do want to talk about this because he's one of our favorite players of all time. That is Chauncey Billups. He is eligible for the Hall of Fame. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I'll just come out and say it. He's one of the better point guards of that era. He just doesn't get the recognition. And I feel like he gets ignored by other fan bases because he never led the league in assists. He was never a top scorer. I mean, he averaged around, I think, like 18 or 19 was his highest. I'm not looking at the numbers right now. But showed up big in the playoffs. Doesn't have great field goal percentage, but has a great true shooting percentage. And one of the first point guards to really just, like, hit it on the pull-up three. Like, that was in his bag. And I feel like a lot of people overlooked that on his game. But during the regular season, wasn't really that popular. Multiple-time All-Star. But he never played on popular teams either. Like those Pistons teams were great. It's just they weren't very popular by other fan bases. But I think he's a Hall of Famer. What about you?
So I'm looking at a graphic Yahoo Sports had put out. So they had Jamal Crawford, Amari Stoudemire, Chauncey Billups, Vince Carter, Joakim Noah, and Sean Marion.
Kind of
I think like if it was down to those 6 and you could only have 2, I think you have to say Vince Carter and Chauncey Billups. But to get to your question, I think he will get in the Hall of Fame because he was the Finals MVP and he won a championship and he had great years in Detroit. I know, yeah. After he got traded from Detroit, he had great years in Denver too with Carmelo. I think to me he's underappreciated because he was doing things that when we watch now, it's normal. Like you didn't really see point guards, I should say, shoot the 3-point shot like he was shooting the 3-point shot. Like to me, I think he kind of was, I don't want to say like a throwback, but like he was just such a great player, but like I'd love to see him in the Hall personally, but I think out of those 6 players I mentioned, I think Vince Carter's a lock. I really do.
His 4th season in Detroit, he shot 5 3-pointers a game and made 43% of them. Chauncey Billups did.
Mm-hmm.
Averaged 19 points per game, 18.5 with 9 assists per game, a steal, 3 rebounds. One of the better point guards. That was his first All-Star appearance. Played 81 games that year. Averaged 19.5 in his second season in Denver after the trade. So I don't know. I mean, he was always that was his highest ever for points per game. But yeah, he was a phenomenal player. I actually honestly think he has a better resume than Chris Bosh. And Chris Bosh was in the NBA Hall of Fame. I mean, in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He has Chauncey Billups, 5-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, 2-time All-Defense, Finals MVP, and and he's the 04 champion. We all know that. But also just his game. Just always showed up big in the playoffs. Mr. Big Shot for a reason. Chris Bosh, I think, was an 11-time All-Star, and I think he made 2, maybe even only 1 All-NBA team in his career, and he was in the Hall of Fame. Now, he's a 2-time NBA champion, and some could say he sacrificed his role. But in an era where Chauncey Billups was battling with Jason Kidd, prime Chris Paul, Darren Williams, just to name a few, he made 3 All-NBA teams. And where I know Chris Bosh was playing against Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and Dirk, but Chauncey was able to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was able to outshine the guys at his position and, get a few awards over him. And I don't think Chris Bosh was able to do that, but Chris Bosh is in the Hall of Fame, and Chauncey Billups deserves it as well.
Yeah, I think he'll get consideration. I wouldn't be surprised maybe he doesn't make it this year, but I mean, I thought what he did in Detroit, winning Finals MVP, like I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago, not a lot of guys can say that. Not a lot of guys can say I have a Finals MVP and I won an NBA championship against the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. Like that's to me, I think that's an accomplishment that maybe you could nod him into the Hall of Fame, but I mean, I don't know. It to me, I think it's a lot of politics too.
I mean, this isn't his first year being eligible, though, right?
Yeah, it is.
His first year?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I thought he had been up. I don't know. I think with this class, if you're picking 2 NBA guys, it's him and Vince Carter out of the guys that you mentioned. I don't see Noah making it. I don't see Jamal Crawford making it all, because I think there has to be more to your resume than just, being a highlight reel.
So I know I don't like to mention his name on this podcast, but Gilbert Arenas was talking about the Hall of Fame, and he was saying that team success shouldn't automatically get you into the Hall of Fame. He thinks it should be individuals. So if you're just looking like individual wise, like to me, I think Vince Carter individually should be in the Hall of Fame. Even Jamal Crawford. I mean, the amount of 6 man of the years that he won, I think you could make that argument. Like Joakim Noah, winning. I think he won a couple Defensive Player of the Years, didn't he?
I think he won 1, and I think he was. I'm gonna look this up. I was just looking up his numbers the other day. He had a good peak. He had a couple. He was in. I think he was he finished top 5 in the NBA MVP voting, but so did Chauncey Billups one year. Yeah, he's a 1-time Defensive Player of the Year, 1-time All NBA, and 3-time All Defense. Again, I think Chauncey Billups has a better resume, though.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying like the only locks would probably be Vince and Chauncey. Like they don't think Amari Stoudemire would make it. They don't think Shawn Marion would make it.
I think Shawn Marion has a better case than Jamal Crawford, though.
It depends how you want to take. It depends like what your argument would be.
I just think he was a player that played. It goes back to him being a winner, though, too. Like he won an NBA championship. He had some deep playoff runs. I feel like he also kind of help establish positionless basketball because he was 6'7", playing the 4 and the 5 spot on those Phoenix Suns rosters. I feel like though he didn't get enough. I don't feel like he wasn't popular enough to get some of the accolades, but he deserved more All-Star appearances, and I think he deserved more All-NBA and All-Defensive appearances as well too. But he just didn't get it because you had Amari Stoudemire. He was taking a lot of shine from him because he's such a popular player. The human highlight reel. Then you had Steve Nash winning MVPs. Someone had to be, they were like, well, we can't give all the awards to these guys. And I felt like Sean Marion, he was the guy that was passed over a little bit, but he had some phenomenal seasons in Phoenix.
Yeah, see, I love people in the comment section because they're debating like Jamal Crawford. I think Ben makes a great point. Crawford had almost 20,000 points off the bench. He's getting in. Like that's an argument you could have. I've even seen people talk about Bill Laimbeer. Why isn't he in the Hall yet? 2-time champion.
But even Bill Laimbeer, though, I mean, I agree with that. He has a great resume too. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, if we're just going off of like simply the eye test, then the Hall of Fame would be a little bit differently. I think you'd see a guy like Jamal Crawford, but man, he played for a lot of teams too. Like he did not. I remember the knock on him. He had like the most years in the NBA, most games played without making a playoff appearance.
Yeah, like I said, I think to me, I think it's more politics than anything else. Like you could say, like individually, I think Vince Carter has the most accolades out of anyone on this list, even though he didn't win an NBA championship. I mean, the guy was a human highlight reel. Felt like he was just he had such a long career too. So
yeah, but I think even Chauncey has a better resume than him. Chauncey has 3 less All-Star appearances, more All-NBA appearances,
okay.
a championship, a Finals MVP, and more all defense appearances. I think, dude, if the voters overlook Chauncey Billups, it's disgusting, and they're not doing the Basketball Hall of Fame due diligence.
Yeah, it's so weird because me and you, before Ben Wallace got in, we weren't sure if he was going to get in the Hall. Just because,
I mean, my biggest knock on Ben Wallace was I didn't think he was the first ballot Hall of Famer because you could really sum up Ben Wallace's career in like 6 seasons. He did all of his awards, everything he did as an individual, all happened within like 6 or 7 seasons. His time in Detroit and then that one season in Chicago where he made his final all-defensive team appearance. But all of his defensive players happened in Detroit, championship, all the All-Star appearances, all the All-NBAs, they all happened in Detroit. He just didn't have the longevity. He played a lot in the NBA, but his peak, in my opinion, Hall of Fame peak for Ben Wallace. And I'm glad he made the Hall of Fame. I just never thought he was the first ballot. But I think Chauncey Billups, he deserves to be in there, man. And I think if you could only put 2 Pistons players in from that championship squad, it'd have to be Ben Wallace and Chauncey Billups.
I think even 2 from this list, I would probably do Vince Carter and Chauncey.
Same. Those are the 2 I would pick.
Like if I had to pick, like I think for me, Vince Carter was just like it's probably just all the dunking highlights I saw as a kid. And maybe, he didn't have the accolades of, some of the other players that were mentioned in the graphic, but it's just like, to me, I think he kind of revolutionized just the way players dunk now. Like, I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, of like how athletic and how like crazy good he was with the Raptors.
Well, I mean, it's more than, I don't want to just say it's just the resume. Like there is an aspect of like watching these guys. Like Vince Carter, he was a very popular player during his time, and he did play for a long time. Longevity should account for something. But also, there was a time where after Michael Jordan retired, they were talking about him, Kobe, Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, all of those guys, who was the next face of the NBA. And I think that should account for something. You can't tell the history of the NBA without talking about Vince Carter. And I think that also makes you a Hall of Famer as well. When you're when you think of the NBA, there's a lot of people that will mention Vince Carter just when you talk about basketball. So that accounts for something as well. But I always typically look at the resumes, and I don't know. I think Chauncey has the best one out of all of them. But it's more than that as well, I should say.
Yeah, maybe it's just the bias in us because we grew up watching him, and he gave us a championship and a lot of great memories. But I hope he gets in. I really do.
It was a fun topic, though. Let's move on to some other topics so that we got going on here. We're talking about the season again. This comes from Bleacher Report. Their season prediction for us was 26-56. Did not like what they wrote about it, by the way. There was no real reason for why they were coming up with the 26-56 record. I didn't like that. I feel like if you give a prediction, you should give some concrete ideas of why you think that's going to happen. It was just, it didn't really mention Cade other than him just being healthy for a little bit, but they didn't really talk. They just kind of talked about the inexperience of Jaden Ivey and Asar Thompson and then James Wiseman. And I just don't even really know if James Wiseman's part of the rotation right now. I do not understand why he's getting so much love from everybody else. I feel like it's kind of an easy cop out when you write something like this. And I don't know. I just don't agree with it. What about you?
I think I saw the Vegas line and it was at 27.5. And Bleacher Report had us at 26 wins. I think we've both said over the past couple of weeks, we see this as a 30-win team at the bare minimum. Assuming everyone's healthy, but when I was reading this article, I wasn't mad at it because I was also thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, the schedule is actually kind of tough. Yeah. So maybe that 35 win total that we both were saying over the past 2 weeks, maybe you can kind of take a couple games off of that because they have a very tough schedule. 15 back-to-backs. They're probably going to be freaking exhausted by like December, January. I thought the article was fair, but to your point, like I feel like every national article I read, they mention James Wiseman a lot, and maybe he's just a player that they mentioned just because he was a number 2 overall pick from a few years ago, and kind of just to keep tabs on him. I don't really know why they were mentioning him like he was like a prized possession.
Well, they talk about him more than they talk about Duren, which I'm not even going to get into that. But my biggest complaint was the article really didn't give me enough to why they were predicting just 26 wins. Like they didn't go into the schedule at all. Maybe it was written before that. They didn't talk about any tough matchups. They just kind of said, well, Cade Cunningham dominated at Team USA. Will the Pistons get him for 70 games? And then I wish they would have went in more with that. But I've been saying if this team is healthy, they're a 32-win team. I think at the bare minimum, a 15-game improvement is good enough. Going from 17 to 32, that's huge for the Detroit Pistons. I think they could do it if they're healthy. I said earlier, though, 6-14 to start the season, but I do think there will be some long win streaks coming for the Pistons this upcoming year. But I don't know. I just didn't agree with the Bleacher Report article for the 26 wins. I thought that was too low.
Yeah, I mean, like Vegas has us at 27.5. And I've told you, I've bet the over probably the past 3 years, and I've lost every time. If they're telling me that Cade Cunningham is worth 10 more wins, I'll listen. But I did bet the over again. So we'll see if I win. I still think like 33 to 35 is where I'm at with this team. If they're healthy, I think Cade Cunningham, I know Luis basically took the words out of my mouth in the comment section on YouTube. I think Cade's going to surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people have been giving the Pistons a lot of media attention and praise, and I'm not used to it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I like ESPN kind of like counting us as the underdog, but they're like actually being fair and giving us media attention. But I do think this team is going to surprise a lot of people that maybe they don't watch the Pistons. Maybe they don't live in Michigan. Maybe they're, out of state and they're just like a casual NBA fan. I think this is a team that could easily be in the hunt for a playing spot if everyone's healthy. I really believe in Monty Williams, and I think he can get the best out of this team.
Yeah, you know me, man. I like the media attention. I like that they're talking about this team fairly. I hated when they were dumping on Detroit. That's been one of my biggest complaints pretty much since we started this podcast. And
yeah,
I don't know. I do think Cade in this healthy roster is worth. I think they're worth 15 wins, man. I think it's going to be a huge improvement. I think Monty, that's something. It kind of just gets overlooked, like the coaching hire. We hear more about like the contract and the money he signed for than like what he brings to the team as a coach, offensively and defensively. And I wish they would talk a little bit more about that. But the NBA doesn't really talk about things like that. They're not the NFL where they talk about how a team schemes and how they play. So we're never going to get that. I just think this team is better than 26 wins. I think it would be, yeah, it's obviously an improvement if they get to 26 wins, but I feel still like the Pistons would be underperforming if they finish with 26 wins. I wouldn't be that happy about it.
I mean, it's a 9-game improvement.
I know. I'm just
that's a positive, but like, you know, I just think, you know, 26, 27, I think that's on the low side.
Yeah.
Because you added more veterans.
Yeah.
You added 2 more veterans. You added one of the best backup point guards, and Monte Morris, whose assist to turnover ratio is ridiculously low.
5 last year. Crazy.
Yeah, you added a sharpshooter in Joe Harris. Whether he's going to play or not, I don't know. It's weird when I look at these depth charts and he's not in there at all. Like, I don't understand that. From the beat writers are basically telling us Joe Harris might just be on ice. I'm like, oh, if that's the case, why'd you trade for him? Then, like, why'd you take on his $20 million contract just to open up cap space for next summer? But they have 3-point shooting. They have veterans. They're bringing Alec Burks and Bojan back. Everyone's a year older. Like, I think they could easily be a 30-win team.
And we've talked about this before. The front court is the weakest position. So we're going to talk about that here in a few seconds. Yeah, I just think with all the improvements, Cade coming back healthy, 26 wins would be underperforming for this team. And then a better head coach in Monty Williams, who had a 15-game win improvement with the Phoenix Suns. They went from 19 wins to 34. Like that's a huge improvement. I think Monty can do it again in Detroit. So I don't agree with Bleacher Report. I can keep talking circles and saying the same thing though. But let's talk about this Memphis trade that also comes from Bleacher Report.
All right, people are going to hate this.
Well, I don't think they will. I think it's a pretty fair trade. So the trade is Memphis Grizzlies received Bojan. The Detroit Pistons received Brandon Clark, Zaire Williams, and a 2026 first-round pick, top 5 protected. I do this trade just for Brandon Clark alone. That's 100%. I think he's one of the better backup bigs in the NBA. He knows his role. One of the best athletes in the NBA, top tier athleticism, high IQ, knows how to rebound, plays with a high motor on both ends, great lob threat from the pick and roll, makes smart, quick decisions with the ball. We're going to that 0.5 offense where you need high IQ basketball players. And he's one of the best finishers in the NBA. I think he would have qualified. I think he would have been 4th in the NBA last year. And I think he shot around 66% around the rim, like within like 10 to 3 feet or something with his floater. Or maybe that was his field goal percentage. But either way, incredible. Makes strong cuts to the basket. There's just so much to love about his game. The only knock really is he's 6'8" and he doesn't really have very much range. He's not much of an outside shooter. But I think if the Pistons were to bring him in, you could bring him in as the backup 5. Again, I think it'd be better if Isaiah's 3-point shot is for real, you could start him after trading Bojan and then have Brandon Clark be your 5. And I think Jalen Duren's better, but there's some similarities to their games where you would have some cohesiveness coming off the second unit with how you run the offense and everything. If you had a Brandon Clark, I just love his game a lot.
Yeah, I like Brandon Clark's game a lot. I was looking at just his numbers as you were talking. Shooting 65.5% this season. That's great. I think for the Grizzlies and why Memphis might pull off a trade like this is I think they're a team that needs veteran leadership. And I think Bojan is that veteran. This would be a lopsided trade if you're Detroit, in my opinion, because you're not only getting Brandon Clark, you're also getting Zaire Williams. And I believe there was a 2026 first round pick, top 3 or top 5 protected. I don't remember the protections on this. Oh, top 5. It makes sense if you want to get younger and possibly add a draft pick into the mix, which I'm sure the Grizzlies would be willing to make a trade like this because Bojan would help out their offense immensely. Imagine having Luke Kennard and Bojan Bogdanovic on the same team.
Well, yeah, they were 11th offensively last year, but they're looking for more firepower, and you get that with Bojan.
Yeah, you're going to have snipers off the bench. You'd probably have one of the best 1-2 punch between Kennard and Bojan if they were both on your roster. I just don't know if Detroit would pull a trade off like this because we've heard Troy before. Like, I want two first round picks or a young player. Like, I don't know.
You're getting that though with this trade. Like, I mean, there's still some question marks about Zaire Williams, but he averaged 8 points per game his rookie year, dropped down to 6 his second year in the league. Not much of a rebounder, not much of a playmaker, but he only played 15 minutes per game in 37 appearances last year. I think Memphis, yeah, they're losing a little defense and a little bit of hustle and motor when you get rid of Brandon Clark. But Bojan, I mean, he's not a bad defender. Like, he can hold his own defensively. And if you have Jaren Jackson there roaming the paint, it's going to be a little better for him. And I think he's going to look better as a defender, just like he did in Utah when him and Rudy Gobert were on the same team. He looked better as a defender with those guys back there. So, I don't know. You're losing a little bit defensively, but what you're getting offensively with Bojan, that's just going to help your team out tremendously. You're getting a sniper. You're getting a guy that can create his own shot. Not much of a rebounder, not much of a playmaker, but what was it, 45, 40, and like 88 last year for Bojan or something?
Yeah.
Incredible numbers.
I'm glad someone mentioned it because he is coming off an Achilles tear. Brandon Clark is.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, there's a risk. But I do know for a fact that the Pistons were very high on Zaire Williams, as were they with Brandon Clark. So those are two guys that I do remember them being very high on during the pre-draft process, and that was the two players that they had their eyes on. So the fact that Bleacher Report wrote this article is actually kind of funny to me. But my honest opinion, I don't think they trade Bojan. I just don't. I think they'll just hold on to him.
You don't think he's going to be on? You don't think they're going to trade him at all?
No, it's just I think the asking price is like in this trade scenario, you do get like you get a draft pick, even though it's protected. You get young players, but like I think he's more valuable to this team right now, and I think even going into next season, at 2 years from now, I think he's still valuable because you need that veteran presence, and his game isn't going to age poorly, even though he's getting up there. I think he'll still be an elite 3-point shooter for however long he wants to play. I just think Troy hasn't really shown me since he's been here, hey, I'm going to trade for this player and get that peak value for him. He's never done that, ever.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think this is a trade where I think he would pull the trigger on a trade like this because you're getting so much back. Like, you're getting the young player, you're getting at least one first-round pick, which I remember some people thinking I was crazy for trying to get first-round picks for Bojan. We talked about this a couple months ago, but then you're getting a proven solid role player in Brandon Clark, who's, I mean, he's a little bit of everything for your team. Not going to be a star by any stretch of the imagination, but a guy that knows his role is going to come in and, play at a high level for you. I think this is a win-win. I think it's honestly a win-win trade for both teams. I don't think you see that very much when it comes to these mock trades.
Yeah, I think both teams in this mock trade, it's a fair trade for both. They both get what they want. You know, the Pistons get two young guys and a draft pick that's protected. The Grizzlies get a veteran shooter off the bench, or whether they want to start him, who knows? But I thought it was a fair trade.
I do too. Zaire Williams just doesn't show you enough, though. Only 26% from the 3-point line on 3 attempts this past year. Did shoot 43% from the field, which is it's all right, and shot 77% from the free throw line. I just don't know what you have in a guy like that yet. I mean, he has great size for the 3, at 6'9" and like 220 pounds, somewhere around there. He was a lottery pick as well. But again, like I said earlier, I would just do this trade for Brandon Clark, even though he's coming off the Achilles injury. I would still do this in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I just can't see Trey doing it. Like I would personally do this, but
would you be mad though if a lesser player comes in for Bojan? Like, I don't know who it would be, but I mean, if this is a real trade that's on the table and he doesn't take it, I'd be pretty upset with him.
Like the only trade that I can honestly say that he's made where I was just like, okay, that makes sense, is when he traded Svi Mykhailiuk for Hamidou Diallo, and we really didn't know what we were getting. That was a trade I was like, okay, you got peak value for Svi. And you got like I believe you got like a second round pick back or something like that.
But you got more than peak value for Svi. That was crazy.
Yeah, like that's the only trade of recent memory that I can think. I was like, okay, he got peak value. Like when was Trey the GM when we had Derrick Rose or no?
Yeah, he traded him.
Oh, yeah, you're right. What we got like Dennis Smith Jr. or something like that, didn't we?
I think so. I don't remember that trade. I like Dennis Smith Jr. though, and he's had a little resurgence though. Quietly had a little resurgence with the Charlotte Hornets. He looked pretty good last year. I think he's going to be. I still am predicting him to be the next Kyle Lowry, where he's going to have like a turnaround like that in the NBA. I'm rooting for you, Dennis Smith Jr.
Yeah, I know it's completely off topic. I was a sicko and I looked up every trade Weaver move, like ever. Like, dude, when he came here, like so many like stretching waves, like trading Kyrie Thomas for Dwayne Dedmon.
Oh, Kyrie Thomas, another one of those guys I thought was going to be great. Awesome. Let's talk about what we do every week, and that's stat predictions.
Okay.
So every week we're going to look at 2 players. This week it's going to be Alec Burks and Bojan, the 2 veterans of the team. What do you think Alec Burks puts up this year stat-wise? What do you think his numbers will be?
12.5 points, about maybe just shy of 3 rebounds, maybe an assist a half a game, and I could see him shooting around 41% from 3 this year for the Pistons.
Ooh, what about how many free throw attempts do you think he gets a game?
Like 3.
Okay. It's on par. I think he takes a dip in the scoring department with Cade returning, improvements from Jaden Ivey. I think he averages 10 points per game. We get 3 rebounds and we get 2 assists a game. And I agree with you. I think he shoots. Yeah, he's pretty consistent from the 3-point line, at least the last 3 years. I mean, Philadelphia shot 42%. But that was like his kind of like coming out party from the 3-point line in those 18 games. Yeah, I'm gonna say he shoots 39% from the 3-point line. Because I think there's going to be a little bit of dip in minutes for him this year. I think he probably plays closer to like 19 minutes per game. And I think playing less minutes sometimes can actually hurt some guys' percentages because they need to get into more of a rhythm. So I'm going to say 10 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, keeping that all the same. And I think he shoots 39% from 3. Those are my stats for Alec Burks.
Yeah, I think his numbers will go up because he's going to be playing with Monte Morris instead of Corey Joseph. Asar Thompson's going to be out there with him. He's not starting Lance, by the way. I don't see him starting right away. I think his numbers will go up just because he's going to have two playmakers out there that it's going to make life easier for him. Because the defense is going to have to pay attention to SR Thompson because he's just so active out there. And I think Monte Morris being a great backup point guard, I think it's just going to open up more for him as a player off the bench. And I could see him getting around 20 minutes a game just because he's that spark plug off the bench. And I feel like Monty is going to love having Alec Burks off the bench and using him quite often.
See, I think he is a player that he doesn't necessarily need people. He's a pretty good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. I thought he was more of shot 43. Yeah, maybe his percentages go up. Last season, just 2 attempts per game on catch and shoot, but 43% from catch and shoot on the 3-point line, 39% from pull up. See, I always thought he was more of like a dribble guy, like needed the ball in his hands. I thought he was always better at creating his own shot more than having guys create for him. That's how I was at Alec Burke. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the percentages do go up for him playing with Monty Morrison, Asar Thompson. And I think we're still going to see some lineups with him and Cade and him and Jaden Ivey. And they're definitely going to get he'll definitely have some open opportunities with those two guys on the floor as well. I don't know. Either way, it's going to be some big numbers. A big year from him. Yeah, man, 43% from catch and shoot. That's good. 40% with 0 dribbles as well. 39%. Listen to this. 66% from 3 with 7 or more dribbles.
Jeez, he's a rhythm shooter. That's crazy. Just launch it.
I mean, it only happens like 2% of the time, but still, you gotta the 2%. That's crazy. Let's talk about Bojan though. What do you think his numbers will be coming off a year? Averaging, let's just round up to 22. Average 22, 4, and 3 for the Pistons last year.
Okay.
That's what he did last year. What do you think he does this year?
I don't think his numbers are going to dip a lot. And I don't think he's going to play as much either.
Yeah, he played 32 minutes per game. Let's start there. How many minutes do you think he gets? So the last...
Like 25, 26.
The last 6 years, he's averaged 30 or more minutes per game. You think this year he drops significantly?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to lean on him as heavily as they did last season as a number one option. I think Cade and Ivy are going to get the bulk of the, being the scoring options out there or the facilitators. I don't think Bojan's going to have that problem anymore. I think he can just kind of be a guy out there just, picking and popping for 3 with, whether, him and Duren do some stuff in the pick and roll or whatever. The actions that him and Cade were doing last year, they kind of built chemistry early into the season. But the points, I might get a lot of flack for this. I think it's only going to be around 16.5 points a game.
That's a huge drop.
Yeah, I see Cade as getting a bulk of the shots.
But you don't see Cade looking for him? Cade's just going to ignore him?
No, I don't think he'll ignore him. I just think he's just going to take a huge dip. He averaged 20 points a game last year for the Pistons as the number one option.
21.6.
And how many shots a game though?
15. 2 more than the year before.
I think he'll get 8 to 10 shots a game.
Whoa.
Well, think about it though, man. You're gonna have a backcourt of Cade and Ivy, both like the ball in their hands. I think they'll look for Bojan, but they're not gonna be too reliant on him.
So the last time he averaged 10 shots per game, the 2018 season when he played for Indiana, averaged 14 points per game on 10 shots, shooting 47% from the field. I mean, I'll take it. 47% from the field, 40% from the 3, and 87% from line. Who was on that Indiana team where Bojan was not getting shots?
I vaguely remember him on Indiana. I think that he had one shot where they beat LeBron. It was like a buzzer beater. I do remember that, but
he was playing Victor Oladipo.
Okay.
Thaddeus Young, Darren Collison, Miles Turner, and Pistons legend Corey Joseph. Oh, and Sabonis.
Don't you think that he would have a lesser role though? Like they don't want him playing close to 35 minutes a night. They maybe he's a second option, possibly third option next to Cade and Ivy. Like I think they're really gonna run the system through Cade.
Yeah, no, I think Cade definitely gets the bulk of the shots, but I would say even with Jaden Ivy, man, my microphone, I'm sorry. Even with Jaden Ivy on the team, I still think he gets close to 12, maybe 14 shots per game, even with Ivy on the floor. Because I think at minimum he's going to be the third option, but I could see him being. I don't even know if I see him being the second option. I could easily see him and Jaden Ivy though getting the same amount of shots per game.
Yeah, I just think they're gonna not rely on him as much. Maybe he's in the corner a lot, spotting up from three, which I think he would probably love to do, especially at his age. But I could be wrong. I think I said 16 and a half, 17, like around there. I just see them monitoring his minutes because they don't want to overexert him. And we never really got an update on his Achilles injury either.
That's true.
Like
so,
I don't know if it's bad or not. Like the Pistons never like made a press release about it, but like he couldn't play like the last 15 games of the year because he had an Achilles injury. We don't know if he tore it or anything.
Probably just sore. I think if he had torn it, we probably would have heard something about some surgery at this point. So his final year in Utah, he played with Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, and Mike Conley. They're all in the backcourt with him. And Donovan Mitchell got 20 shots per game. Jordan Clarkson got 14. Mike Conley got 11. And Bojan got 13. I think that's the way it could go. Like, I think Cade, I don't even know if Cade will shoot it 20 times per game, but Cade probably gets at least 18 shots per game. And then, yeah, maybe Jaden Ivy beats it. Maybe Jaden Ivy gets like 14 or 15. And then maybe Bojan gets like 12 or 13. It could be like that.
I know next week we'll talk about other players, but I think Duran's going to probably have the highest point per game bump up on this team.
Ooh, save that for next week. We'll put him on. We'll
but
go on.
No, you're good.
No, I was just gonna say, like for me, for Bojan, I think he averages 18 points per game. I think he still gets 30 minutes per game. And I think he's gonna average like 4 rebounds and probably 2 assists per game. I think the assist numbers take a little bit of a dip because he'll be more of a catch and shoot role than he will be like creating for himself type of role. But I still think he shoots great numbers as well.
Okay.
And I don't know where the talk of him coming off the bench is because since 2017 and 2018, he started every game. He started 80 for Indiana, 81 for Indiana, 63 for Utah, 72 for Utah, 69 for Utah, and then all 59 games for the Pistons last year. I just don't think I think he's always going to be a starter. I don't see why we're talking. No, I mean, we're not talking about him right now coming off the bench, but I see a lot of people saying he's going to move to that 6th man role.
Yeah, like I see a lot of Pistons fans want to throw Asar out into the wind like right away. And I think he's capable defensively, but I would rather ease him into the starting lineup. Like maybe give Bojan a good 10 to 15 games just to kind of see where he's at. And maybe if Asar's just playing so well off the bench, you kind of forced to just put him in the starting lineup. Like let Asar play against 2s before he goes up against the best, 1s, night in and night out.
Well, I mean, you don't have to necessarily start Asar, but I want to see Bojan still play the 4 because that's what he played his last 2 seasons in Utah and Detroit. He was playing the 4. I mean, whether you're starting Isaiah Livers or Alec Burks or somebody else at that 3 spot, or even if you decide to go Monte Morris as the starting point guard with Jaden Ivey in the backcourt and Cade Cunningham play the 3, but still being in that point guard facilitator role, that's fine with me. I just want to see Bojan play the 4. I think that's better overall for the Pistons.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We could both be wrong, and Monty could just say, "Screw your two big lineups."
Oh, I still think Asar starts.
Okay.
I think Asar and Bojan at the 3 and the 4. But let's talk about this final topic. I'm gonna love talking about this.
It's got to be a Killian Hayes topic.
You know it is, man. You saw the prep sheet. I was talking about this with Wes from the DBB podcast, but we were kind of talking about it. I just kind of asked the question, but do you think if Killian Hayes had played like a lottery pick, Troy Weaver would have went a different direction in the NBA drafts?
Oh man, this is a tough question because like it's such a hypothetical. Like I would ask you, playing like a lottery pick, are you saying like having like a Halliburton type jump or a Halliburton type stat line?
Well, more of like looking like, okay, he's our guy. We got our guy at the one. We're set at the one spot. We don't need to, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
See, the way I took it was if Killian Hayes played like that lottery pick that we thought he was going to be, and I still think he's a great player and he developed a lot this past season, you might not have Cade Cunningham.
Ooh, okay.
That's what you might have maybe Evan Mobley or Jalen Green or Jalen Suggs. Like, who knows?
Jeez.
You might not have Jaden Ivey. Think about it that way. Maybe you take a huge jump. You might not have Asar Thompson.
See, go on. My bad.
No, my point is, if Killian Hayes played like what you asked, like a lottery pick, like he exceeded expectations, you might not have half the players on this roster. He was a sacrificial lamb for Cade Cunningham, and I think a lot of Pistons fans know that and they acknowledge that. Not that he's a bad player. Offensively, it just hasn't clicked yet. We saw glimpses this year. We saw like a month and a half where he was just putting it together, but like it's just not there consistently yet. And I'm thankful Troy did draft Killian Hayes because we have a nice young core, including him with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Durden, Jaden Ivey, and Asar Thompson.
See, because we always talk about like, what if the Pistons drafted Tyrese Halliburton? It's like, okay, yeah, that definitely changes the trajectory of this team. Let's be honest, it changes the drafts. But if Killian Hayes had came in and say he was averaging like 12, 6, and 4, 12.6 assists and 4 rebounds his rookie year, and like you saw like offensive improvement from game 1 to game 82, that would have been, you're like, okay, cool, we got a point guard of the future. I don't think Jalen Green was in play with the number 1 overall pick, but if Killian Hayes looked like a franchise point guard, you might consider Jalen Green at the number 1 with the number 1 overall pick playing off of Killian Hayes. That might make sense. I don't think it happens, but I also think Cade Cunningham was such a good player in college that you have to draft him no matter what with the number 1 overall pick. I do think, though, if Killian Hayes played really well his rookie year, Troy Weaver still drafts Cade Cunningham, but I agree with you. I think Jaden Ivey is not the pick at number 5. I think they go some other direction with that pick.
Well, my point is I'm looking at it from a play point or a play style. Like if Killian Hayes projected to play like the number 7 overall pick, and he's just going crazy, he's putting up like 15 and 7. You might not have the first overall pick the next year. Maybe you have 3 or 4. Maybe in the Jaden Ivey and Jalen Durden draft, you might not have any of these guys that we're talking about on the roster, because if Killian had a similar production line to a Tyrese Halliburton, this team looks completely different.
Well, I was saying too, more of we're still drafting number 1 the next year. Like this draft pick still stay the same.
Yeah.
I just think they go a different direction. Like Troy Weaver might draft Shadon Sharp, number 5.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's the way I thought of it. Like if he just came out and he was putting up good numbers, we don't have that first overall pick. But we just don't the next season. Like maybe we're at 3 or 4 instead of 1. And maybe you have Evan Mobley. Like who knows?
Well, I was just saying, well, like I've already explained, my thinking was that they would still have
Yeah.
the number one overall pick, but there might have been a different. Again, I don't think they draft if Killian Hayes played really well. I don't think, and they still end up with the number one overall pick. I still think Cade Cunningham is the answer.
Yeah.
But there's a real serious consideration for Jalen Green and Evan Mobley with that number one overall pick, because it would just make sense. You're set at the point guard spot. And then with the Jaden Ivey draft, dude, I'm saying you might take Benedict Mathurin, you might take Shadon Sharp, you might even draft the Dyson Daniels with the 5th pick. Who knows? Because you're like, yeah, we got Killian Hayes. So we can now that we have that guy set, we can take a chance on one of these other guys that might show, might have more potential than they've shown so far. Like Shadon, like we didn't know what he was going to do, and he's looked pretty good so far for the Trailblazers. I don't know. It's an interesting question. I'm glad we got to talk about it, though. We don't have to keep talking.
Me too. People like the question. They like that. Some people didn't like the hypotheticals, but I was thinking about it today. I was like, man, we wouldn't have half the players in the roster if he actually like put up numbers that we thought he was going to put up, like coming out of France.
Man, that would just be
Germany, wherever he came out of. I forget.
Ulm, Germany. Yep.
Yeah, Germany.
I got a Q&A question though before we start the Q&A.
Okay. Well, it's Cameron's question.
we'll just call this the Cameron segment. Okay, he says, how much of a hand do you think Monty Williams had in bringing in Monte Morris in trading for Joe Harris? Do you think it was all Troy's doing for Monty, or Monty had a say? I'm a little disappointed that we didn't go harder after guys like Utah and Torrey Craig. What are your thoughts? So I'll ask you the first part. How much of a hand do you think Monty Williams had in bringing Monte Morris and trading for Joe Harris?
I think he had a small part, but I've seen a lot of Pistons fans on Twitter joke that Troy just traded for Monte Morris because he looks like him.
Oh my gosh!
Like if you put Troy Weaver and Monte Morris side by side, they look identical.
That is ridiculous.
I do think he had a small part because Monty mentioned like having Rubio in Phoenix was a big part for him.
Yep.
He probably told Troy, he's like, I need a good veteran backup point guard. I think that was a big selling point for Monty. Like, I need my backup point guard. So
I agree with you on that. I think that Monty had like a small part in bringing in Monte Morris, but trading for Joe Harris, I don't know if they have a connection or not. I just don't think Monty Williams had any say in the Joe Harris thing.
I think it was just the Joe Harris trade to me is still kind of a head scratcher. Because I think most of us thought we were throwing the bag at Cam Johnson.
Yeah.
And like making that trade, we actually helped the Nets out so they could sign Cam Johnson.
But I mean, Joe Harris's contract, I think it does come up off the books next year.
It does. Yeah, it's only a 1-year rental.
Yeah.
So if it works out, great. If it doesn't, who cares?
Yeah. So would you rather have them try to go harder after Utah or Torrey Craig versus Joe Harris? I'm gonna change the question that way.
Utah or Torrey Craig instead of Joe Harris? That's a great question. I think hypothetically, yes, but I understand why they went after Joe Harris. I could understand it.
Yeah, it's a lot of money coming off a great 3-point shooter when he's on the floor. I think he played 76 games last year. I got to look this up again.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Harris is a great 3-point shooter, but he did have injuries last year.
Well, he played 74 games.
I think Utah had a great year in Phoenix. Or Phoenix, that's where he signed. He had a great year in Brooklyn. I think Phoenix stole him. And then Torrey Craig, I think a lot of us thought that he was coming to Detroit just because he played for Monty in Phoenix. But he goes to Chicago instead. So maybe it was a missed opportunity. I'm not sure. Time will tell. But we're just going to have to wait and see what Joe Harris looks like because we don't know how serious his injury was. I mean, he could come out just, have fresh legs, just, shooting that thing from 3. like he does, or he could look really bad and the trade could look like a huge question mark for the Pistons. I don't know yet. It's hard to tell because I haven't seen Joe Harris play.
Yeah, Utah's minutes went down quite a bit once they made that trade with Phoenix. Yeah. I think I'm going to go out and say that I'm glad we went after Joe Harris because I think Utah, he did shoot 44% from the three, but he had a lot of games where it was just 2 points, 4 points, no points. Even when he was getting minutes, it was just, he had games where he only had 5 points. You know, it looked like his high was like 11 or 17 so far. 20 is so far as his highest. Yeah, it just, I don't know. There's not much to his game. It seems like when he's not shooting the ball well, there's really not much more he's giving you on a nightly basis. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say like Utah would have been cool to see him in a larger role in Detroit. I don't know how much better that would have been for his career. I think he's just, he's just kind of like a deeper piece on a team that when he's on the floor, he's a reliable catch and shoot player. But I don't know. I'd rather go after. I'm much happier we went after Joe Harris, who I feel like is more of a more complete basketball player than Utah, even though he's a little older. And there are some injury concerns, but again, he did play 71 games for the Nets last year.
Yeah. I think it was a fair question. I think the Harris move was just more for cap flexibility. That's all it was.
Yeah. You got any other questions though?
Yeah, we do have a Q&A question. I'll let you answer because I have to take a piss.
Always. Actually, I think the last 3 podcasts you haven't had to do this.
Yeah, I've been holding it for a while, but this is a good question. I know you'll like answering it.
Oh, this is tough. Which young guy would you be willing to part with to get McDaniels from the T-Wolves? And I'm assuming Killian Hayes and like James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley. Like, I mean, obviously those 3 would be my answer. But if you're talking about like from the core, I'm not giving up Cade Cunningham. I'm not giving up Duren. I don't want to give up on Ivy yet either. But then again, I do have a SAR who I think could slide in, would be pretty nice. Man, that's a tough question. I can't even just say pass. I'll answer it. I think I'd be willing to give up Jaden Ivey for McDaniels. I really don't want to. I really don't love that. I would rather keep Jaden Ivey, but for the sake of the question, I think I'd be willing to give up Jaden Ivey for McDaniels, but I don't want to do it.
You wouldn't trade for Jaden McDaniels?
No. I said I'll answer the question. And I mean, I can't do Killian Hayes, James Wiseman, or Marvin Bagley. I couldn't give up any of those guys. I'm assuming I can't. So if I'm going through the core, I'm not giving up Cade. I'm not giving up Duren. I'm not giving up Asar. I think I would give up Jaden Ivey for McDaniels. I don't want to, but I think out of those 4, I would give up Jaden Ivey for McDaniels. But I'd rather keep Ivey.
I think you could get away with trading a first and maybe a lesser player. But you can't trade a first because of the New York Knicks shit unless we get the pick swap back. But like, if you could. What's that?
You got to pick a young guy.
A young guy. Would you trade Sasser? Doesn't really specify what a young guy is. I mean, this whole team's young.
Yeah, well, I mean, I assumed Mr. Jones was talking about like one of the core 4. That's how I interpret it as like one of those guys that who would you give up? I mean, really neat, none of them, but for the sake of the question, like I said, I would give up Ivy. Just for the sake of the question. I'd rather keep Ivy though. very clear.
Yeah, he's a great player. He's exactly what they need at the small forward position. But I think Asar has the potential to be a similar type of player.
So you give up Asar?
No, like if I did have to give up a young player, it'd probably be like Wiseman.
You can't give up Wiseman. I just said that. I would give up Wiseman too. T-Wolves aren't taking Wiseman though. They want one of the younger.
I know that. You know that. I don't want to give up anyone. I don't want to give up Duren or Ivy or
you picked the question, man.
Yeah, I can't do it.
We could have avoided this entire being this uncomfortable.
I'm not uncomfortable. It's just like I like him, but do I really like him that much to get rid of Ivy when I think he can be a really good shooting guard next to Cade?
Oh, I do too. I don't want to give up
Yeah,
Ivy.
I don't know, man. Like,
for the sake of the question, that's who I'd get par with. I just think the potential for Sar is just through the roof, and I think we're going to see him be more of a complementary player on this Pistons team. But if you didn't have Ivy, you would see something even greater from Asar. So, like, I'm going for reaching the highest of high ceilings for Asar by getting rid of Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, like
that makes sense.
I don't like that's really hard to like. Parting with Ivy, for me, I think I kind of have an attachment to him because I think he's going to be a really good player. Maybe I need to take off my Piston like fan hat for a while and kind of just be rational. But
is there a piece of you that thinks that Ivy might try to do too much with this team? Like, it seems like Cade, Asar, and Duren like might all fall in line and be like, look, for the greater good of the team. And I'm just basically talking about that latest video of Jaden Ivey, like over dribbling and getting locked up by Noel. I don't forget his first name. The short 5'8" point guard.
Oh, that I really didn't have a problem with. And I think it was you that tweeted it. You're like, yeah, short guys are always really hard to get around because they get so low.
Yeah, I said short guards. Ivy would probably get a screen or pass out of that. And I don't think we're going to see a ton of isolation Jaden Ivey anyways during the season. I think he plays more off the ball and Cade and other guys feed him.
Yeah, but I love this question though by Mr. Jones, by the way. But I think to your question about Ivy, I think Ivy kind of buys into Monty's system. I think they're going to use him more of just like an off ball type of guard, and I know I'll probably get killed for that in the comments, but I think he'll do a lot of cutting. He'll do a lot of just. I don't want to say like I can't think of his name right now. It's gonna piss me off. It's a pretty good shooting guard. I can't think of his name, but I think he'll just play more off ball. I don't think he's gonna like try to make those flashy passes or anything. I think he'll just like Monty will try to dumb it down for him and just let Cade be that lead guard and have Ivy there, just in case. Like kind of like a Chauncey Billups to Rip Hamilton. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all knew Chauncey was the point guard. You didn't have to worry about Rip like taking the ball up the court. I think Ivy could just kind of play off of Cade.
Well, I think they're going to be special together, but it's just
yeah. Like I think his upside is just Ivy's upside is so high that like I would feel it would be really hard for me to trade him.
But I mean, there's a part of me that thinks though he might try to do it all to himself all the time. Like he might try to play hero ball and it just doesn't work. Like there's a small piece of me that thinks that might actually be that might actually happen, and that's the part I'm scared for. Like, because I mean, I get it. You want to go out and get yours. You want to get paid the most. You want to have the most accolades. You want to reach the pinnacle of basketball. That's why you work for it. Like, not everybody wants to sacrifice so much so early on. Like, it takes very unique and special players to do that. I mean, I ultimately think Ivy does do that, but there's a small part of me where it's like, just based off that video where I'm like, man, maybe he tries to do too much and he tries to play without of the system and tries to win games himself. And that is part of the reason why I'd be willing to trade him for McDaniels. But again, I'd rather keep Ivy.
I think with that clip, that Rico Hines clip, which to my knowledge, that's the only clip that accidentally got leaked out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, where's the footage? Where's the footage? Like, probably come out next week. A lot of times in those Rico Hines runs, they're practicing stuff they probably wouldn't do in a game. And I think Ivy was just practicing something. Because Cade was right. Cade was open. He had his hands up like, hey, you want to pass me the ball? You can. Like, I'm open.
But that was also the part of the reason I had a problem with it, where I'm like, because, I get you're wanting to work on a weakness to your game, but also let's develop good habits, let's.
Yeah, I mean, it's summer runs. They don't take it seriously. I mean, come on. Devin Booker was bitching that they were playing defense in open runs, but come on, man. Like, I think Ivy will be fine. I think it might be a little hard for him at first to defer to Cade, because I think at his best is when he has the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
But I think he's a smart enough player where he can be that number 2 option, and he can be that shooting guard that's, coming off a pick or coming off a screen, or, having backdoor cut opportunities or just cutting opportunities, because he's so fast and athletic, and he can kind of just be that slasher that you want.
It's going to be fun. We got any more questions, though?
Mm-hmm. We do. We got one from Luis. He's literally he's carrying our Pistons group chat. It's so dead in there, and like when there is someone in there, it's usually someone trying to promote their shit. We just kick them out. But
I wish that dude would have sent T-shirts though that wanted to promote his Instagram.
I don't even think they were real T-shirts.
I don't think they were either, but I'm just saying, like, if you want to, like, I'm serious. Send me a T-shirt. I'll promote your T-shirt business. Send me a T-shirt.
And they look like pretty wish.com.
Hey. Even if it's tight, I'll still put it on for you.
But let's get to Luis's question. Would a Karl Towns trade make sense for this team after next season?
Oh man, I do love Karl Anthony Towns' game. I love that he's a stretch 4, but he's always wanting you leaving. There's always more that I want from him. But I think him and Cade would be pretty amazing together in a little 2-man game. I don't know what I'd be willing to give up for him. Maybe that picture becomes a little clearer after this year. It's hard for me to answer this question though, because I got to see how the season plays out.
Mm-hmm.
I think any team would be excited though to have a Karl Anthony Towns on their roster, because he is a good player.
Yeah. So would a Karl Towns make sense for this team after next season? I think contract wise, I do want to look it up, because I know he is on a pretty big deal. I think the player himself, he's a great player, but I'm just looking for like long-term future with this team. And I'm pulling up his contract right now. I do apologize for you guys that are watching live. So, yikes. Yeah, it's a lot. So he's making around $30 million per year with the Timberwolves. I think last season was the first year where he really had like injury, like I don't want to say like he's injury prone, but last year was like the first year, because I had him in fantasy, that he just wasn't available like all year.
He only played 29 games. I had in fantasy as well.
Yeah, so I like him as a player. I just don't know. Ryan Anton just took the words out of my mouth. Is he a fit in Detroit though? I'm not sure. Is he a Troy Weaver guy?
Not sure. He's better as a center than he was at the 4. That's what he played this year. He played at the 4, and in those 29 games, lowest rebounding numbers, didn't even get you a full block per game. I mean, he shot I think he's better at the 5 because where he can use that athleticism, use that offensive game of his to go against, and like it's a great mismatch at the 5. He's just kind of an average player at the 4. I shouldn't say average, but he's more average at the 4 than he is at the 5. So you have to make it work with him and Duren.
I think this is my next question. What do the Detroit Pistons think of Duren? Is he your franchise center, or is it just a placeholder until someone else becomes available that you want?
I mean, I think Duren athletically, and I think if he figures it out defensively, he could potentially play the 4 on that side. But again, I don't think you go with 2 bigs. It just doesn't really work with the Twin Towers lineups in today's NBA, even if they have a stretch game.
Yeah.
I'd have to be out on this, man. I mean, unless Duren is just kind of like a so-so player.
Mm-hmm.
For right now, as a manager, I think Duren will be much better. So I'm going to have to say no, Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't make sense for this team. Unless he shows me something at the 4. If he can give me, 25 and 10 at the 4 spot with 1 block per game, sure. But if he's giving me 20 and 8, I mean, the 5 assists are nice. Don't get me wrong. He is somewhat of a playmaker, but I just think he's out of position at the 4. Show me what you can do at the 4 first, and then I think it would give you a clear picture.
I just think a player of his status and the type of player he is something that the Pistons need at the power forward. I would be more open to trading for Lauri Markkanen at the power forward position for the Pistons.
Yeah, because
I know I've mentioned that multiple times this year. I think Lauri Markkanen for me would make more sense, and he probably wouldn't cost as much as a Karl Towns, like asset wise. I don't really think you would have to get up a whole lot of assets for a guy like a Lauri Markkanen. I think with the Karl Towns, Minnesota traded basically all their draft picks for Rudy Gobert, and we'll see if it works out or not. Their first year, they did all right. But, I mean, there were times where Naz Reid was playing better than Rudy Gobert. So, I don't know. I just feel like Minnesota is, to me, I think they're in a win-now mode because of Anthony Edwards. I think Anthony Edwards is special. And I think they have to figure out which players are going to stay on this roster long-term and which players aren't. And I wouldn't be surprised if Karl Towns or Rudy Gobert was on the move.
I mean, you can't play them together. That's for sure. Karl-Anthony Towns is a center in today's NBA. Lauri Markkanen's better at the 4 than Karl-Anthony is at the 4. But if you can get Karl-Anthony Towns back at the 5, he's the better overall player. Just because he can take advantage of those mismatches. I mean, yeah, I think he's better at the 5 than he is at the 4. Give me center Karl-Anthony Towns versus power forward Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I just look at Markkanen. And I know people are like, Lauri's price went up because he's averaging 25 points a game. I'm just saying from a star status point, if you're a GM and you have Karl-Anthony Towns and Lauri Markkanen, I guarantee you more teams would offer you more draft picks and compensation for Karl-Anthony Towns than they would Lauri Markkanen, just because of the player he is. Lauri had a phenomenal season this year. I did not see that coming out of him in Utah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody did. Maybe the Jazz did.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Lauri Markkanen would be a little bit more difficult to get just because he had a 25 and 8 season and Karl-Anthony Towns coming off the injury, but also it was his worst season statistically than his rookie season was his worst. But I mean, he was a rookie, but that was his worst season since his rookie year that he's had in the NBA.
No, he's a good player, man. He really is.
No, they both are, but I think Karl-Anthony Towns is better as a center than he is as a power forward.
It's so funny because we talked about this guy, I want to say a couple months ago.
Okay.
And we've talked about the Pelicans. I feel like a lot, but it's more been focused like on Zion. But Rob wants to know if we would trade for Brandon Ingram.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. I love Brandon Ingram's game.
Yeah, same here.
He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. I love Brandon Ingram's game. There's something about his personality and the way he carries himself that he just says Detroit Piston to me. He would be awesome. Like as long as I don't have to give up Cade Cunningham, there's almost I'd be willing to give up quite a few players for Brandon Ingram. As long as he can stay healthy, that's his only knock. But man, he's a damn good player.
I think a lot of people or a lot of teams would love to trade for Brandon Ingram. I think you would have to split up like half of your your new core four with the Sar, Duran, and Ivy. But it may be worth it. I just can't see New Orleans trading him. I say New Orleans trade Zion before they trade Ingram.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that would. I mean, they're both kind of injury. Like, I mean,
yeah,
he's never played more than 62 games for the New Orleans Pelicans. That's his high since he's been a Pelican, and that was his first year being an All-Star too. But he averaged 24, 6, and 4 with a steal and almost a full block, shooting 39% from three, 46% from the field, and 85% from the free throw line. And I mean, he had a great stretch of games last year when he came back from he's 48% from the field, 39% from three, and 88% from the line, averaging 25 a game with 5 rebounds and 6 assists. Yeah, Brandon Ingram's he's a dog, man. He's a ball player.
He's a bucket, man. I think every team in the NBA wants a Brandon Ingram on their basketball team. I really do. He's just that good, and I guess we're gonna stay on the train for players that maybe we would trade for. I guess it's becoming a Q&A trade segment. Bravo asked if we would trade for Julius Randle.
No, not now. I mean, I do love Julius Randle's game, and I think he's a phenomenal player, but I just think he's too much of a ball stopper for this team.
For me, like, I would say he's an above average upgrade over Stu because of his post moves and his ability to, hit the mid range and occasionally hit a 3-pointer, but like he doesn't really move the needle enough for me where I was just like, I have to have Julius Randle on my basketball team. Like, Julius Randle's available, let's go get him. I've seen him so much in the playoffs where he shrinks, and it's just like, where is he? I think he's a good regular season player, but I think come playoff time, it's just teams know how to game plan for him, and he's really easy to guard.
He's a ball stopper. That's the biggest thing. Yeah. Like he holds on to the ball. He doesn't make quick decisions with it. He did average. I mean, his first All-Star appearance came in the 2021 season where he averaged 24, 10, and 6 assists with a steal. And he shot 41% from the three-point line on 5 attempts and shot 46% from the field with 81% from the line. Great year, but I don't think he's much of a playmaker. It's just his usage is so high that he's going to get assists with that. But he's not. I mean, if he could buy in and he could play off of someone and he wasn't going to be such a ball stopper, I would. That's just a lot of That's just a lot of things to ask of him to do. He'd be changing his game tremendously. So it's a no for me. I would not trade for him.
Yeah, me either. I think he would be. I don't want to say he would be cheap because I don't think any NBA player you trade for will be cheap. But I just, when I look at power forwards, like, I think on my dream board, like, Lauri Markkanen's number one. Like, just the more I think about it, I was just like, man, he would be perfect. But like, there's just so many power forwards that, like, I think the Pistons could target, but I don't think we would get.
No, I think like what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, Pascal Siakam's probably the most realistic all-star the Pistons could get.
Yeah, as of right now, I mean, there's always going to be a disgruntled like superstar. Like, I would have loved to get into the Domantas Sabonis sweepstakes before the Kings did, because I thought like a Sabonis and a Cade 1-2 punch would be lethal.
That would be fun.
Yeah. We'll do one more question, then we can wrap it up. This comes from Louise again. I feel like we've answered this question a few times. Will the Pistons make a trade before the season starts?
I'm gonna go ahead and say yeah. I think I said yes last time we answered this question. I'll stick with the same answer. Yes.
You want to guess what player?
Oh, there's so many players in the NBA.
No, I mean on the team.
Oh, I
like
think
our
it's
team.
well, we talked about Killian Hayes last week, and man, I want to say Bojan. He would make the most sense before the season starts, but it also makes sense to keep him. So I think it's either Bojan or Killian Hayes that gets traded before the season starts. Maybe even Marvin Bagley. He'd be a sneaky guy to trade away. I just don't know what his value is right now.
Yeah, I think the cop out and easy answer would be Killian, because I think a lot of Pistons fans they look at Marcus Sasser, they look at Monte Morris getting traded here, and they're like, there's no room for this kid anymore. But I think it might be Bagley as well, because I think Troy Weaver is so invested into James Wiseman that he believes that given the opportunity and given a full season of development under the Pistons coaching staff, he could become a real player. I don't know. I'm not saying that he doesn't believe in Bagley. I'm sure he does, but you could read all the reports. Like, if the Pistons got a top pick in that draft, Pistons are probably drafting Wiseman with the top 3 pick. And the fact that he got him for basically nothing, he's probably ecstatic about that. And I think he's really invested in him as a player.
Man, can you, Matt? Never mind. I can't even get into that. I think Bagley is who he is. I think James Wiseman has a little bit more time. I mean, he is only 22. I think he's only played a total of 81 career games. So you definitely got to see what you have with him. But again, to answer Luis's question, I think it's one of those 3: Bojan, Killian Hayes, or Marvin Bagley that gets traded.
Yeah, like I said, I think it could be Killian, it could be Bagley. I mean, just shock us. It could be Livers. You never know.
It could be, but don't say that.
Yeah, all right. We've been on for 2 hours. Feels like we're on like every podcast for 2 hours, but I do love the Q&A segment. Probably my favorite on top of the topics, but why don't we tell the people where they can find the podcast and where they can support it?
Absolutely. First, follow me on Twitter at Lance Caparosi. But thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk Podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.